Hey y'all, welcome back. I've been doing a lot of thinking this week and trying to figure out where I want to go with these videos because I don't really want to sit there and just point out this went bad in my life, this went bad in my life, this went bad in my life, this went bad in the relationship. Um, I don't want to do that. Um, so I think what I've decided to do is I'm going to start from square one of my story, how I met my abuser, and how things just progressed. Um, when I was going through it, before I get started on the first part of my story, I just wanted it to be known that when I was going through everything, at the time, I didn't notice the red flags. At the time, I was letting a lot of things go. When I think about it now, I'm like, oh my god, like, I feel stupid. You know what I mean? When I tell people, like, oh, this happened, that happened, this happened, that happened, again, I feel stupid. Like, I always told myself, oh, I would never let anybody do this or that to me. I would never, it was a whole thing. Sorry if you hear my dog in the kennel. I figured if I didn't kennel him, he'd be all up in the business. But like I was saying, I I made a lot of excuses, to say the least. When everything was happening. And when you're in the situation I was going through, you go through pretty much a fight or flight moment. And after so long, it becomes a constant fight. And then when you're in these situations, your body is literally constantly in survival mode. Constantly. It makes you seem exhausted all the time, to be honest. When I would say I'm tired, like, it wasn't that I was actually tired. Like, mentally, I was drained. But let's go ahead and let me start telling you my story from the beginning. I had met my abuser online. I feel like that's kind of common nowadays, due to the life we live, technology and everything. So I met him online, and we had text and talked on the phone for quite a while. And at that point in time, I had my son 24/7. His dad wasn't around much. So I'm one who doesn't like who I'm dating to be around my child. So my abuser and I, we just talked for quite a while. He understood the situation with my son, and, he respected that at the time. So eventually, one of my younger cousins who used to stay with me practically every weekend, love that girl, she would babysit for me. So me and him could go out and have dates and spend time together, which those were great. They were fantastic. He was so sweet and nice and charming. It was great. In the beginning, obviously, I feel like that's how it always is, right? And then eventually he started getting kind of pushy. At the time, I didn't look at it that way. What I mean by that is he knew how I felt about having a man around my son, somebody I was dating around him. So we would text, and it'd be, I want to see you, I miss you, things like that. And I'd be like, well, I want to see you too, but, I have my son right now. And stuff, and be like, oh, just let me come over. And it would be oh, I understand why you don't want, people around your son, but I don't plan on going anywhere, and I want to be in your guys' lives. And so on and so forth. And of course, a single mom who her son's father wasn't really around or doing much, it sounded great. You know what I mean? Like, in your head, as a single mother to a little boy, there's a man out here saying he cares about you and he wants to be around for you and your child. Like, he was always including my son when it came to him talking about, like, our relationship, which, you know, I thought was super sweet. And I love the fact that, like, he was super accepting that I had a son and that he was willing to, like, be there for my son. Granted, like I said, I didn't want a man around until I was sure that he was going to be there, you know, in my head forever, you know. So some time went by, and then after about, I want to say it was around 5 months, of everything going great, he, like I said, sweet, charming, talked about the future all the time, and the life he wanted us to have, and it sounded amazing, you know. So I eventually let him meet my son, and oh gosh, they hit it off. I can't even lie. My son, oh boy, he wants to wrestle, he wants to fight, he wants to play sports, he wants to do it all. And my abuser was all for it. Like, and it melted my heart seeing those two together, because, like, they did have a great connection when they first met. And it made me feel good. So then after a few more months, he would start complaining about issues he was having with his roommate. Keep in mind, I'm being told his roommate is female, but they're friends, and she has a boyfriend. Now, obviously, thinking back, I wonder how true that really was. Right? So, you know, red flags. Anyway, he wanted to move in with me. Well, I had some mold issues in my apartment, so I've been put up into a hotel for a few weeks by my apartment company. And finally, they said, you know what, we're just going to move you to another apartment. I asked this man, will you come help me move? At this point, we had been dating 5-6 months. And he's like, yeah, I'll come help, I'll be there. My stepdad, my uncle, my mom, my little cousin came over. Sorry, my hair's itching my face. To all help me pack up and move literally overnight. Like, I left the hotel on a Friday, me and my little cousin Friday night, packed up my entire 2-bedroom apartment as much as we possibly could, and the next day, you know, we were supposed to get everything moved into this other apartment because they didn't want us in that apartment any longer. Well, he didn't show up. I called and called. Didn't show up. Now that I look back, like, that was his first chance to, like, really step up. And he didn't. And his excuse is he was at the gym playing basketball. We had been talking for weeks about me needing to move and that he was going to help. And he didn't show. I let it go. Like I said, we'd only been dating 5-ish months, so I let it go. A few weeks later, maybe a month, he started getting an attitude with me because he was having these issues with his roommate and he wanted to move in with me. He had met my son at that point, like I said, really got along, but I wasn't ready for it. And he would get an attitude with me about it. And I'd be like, well, are you coming over tonight? Like, he'd be like, I don't know. So it became kind of cold from him at that point versus the understanding him that I had previously known. And then some time went by. He went trick-or-treating with me and my cousins and nieces and nephews and son. Then he comes to my son's birthday party. Then he stops by my aunt's house for Thanksgiving. And then Christmas rolls around. He comes over, puts gifts under the tree for me and my son. And I asked, well, will you stay Christmas Eve with us? Because the plan was wake up Christmas morning, open gifts, and then go to my family's Christmas Day. He doesn't come over Christmas Eve. His reason, he's with his family. Okay. Understandable, I guess. He shows up a little bit later Christmas morning when my son and I were getting ready to go to my grandmother's house. Which, keep in mind, she had just recently passed away in November, the day after my son's birthday. And he called out of work and he was there with us the day my grandma passed away. So that was a big deal to me. Sorry, I'm going to tear up. But Christmas comes around. He wasn't there Christmas morning like I asked him to be. He comes over to my house. My son and I open our gifts from him. Him and I had already done... My son opened all of his gifts for me already at that point. I mean, it's Christmas morning and it's a little 3-year-old. Not going to make him wait for somebody that you don't know is coming. Anyway, he gets there, open gifts. He got me this heartbeat necklace and got Trey, I believe it was a remote control car. And then I asked, like, okay, are you coming to my grandmother's house, which is now my uncle's house? And we all had matching shirts. And there were these red and black plaid thermals. And I was told, yeah, he'll stop by, but he's got to go to his family's too. Completely understandable. You know what I'm saying? Okay, yeah, of course. Go see your family. We've only been dating about 6-ish months or so. Go ahead. Well, he doesn't show up at all to my family's house. So, another red flag, but again, I let it go. Because we had only been dating... Excuse me one second. Sorry. Had to grab a tissue. We had only been dating, like I said, 6 months or so. So, there were things that I felt like, at that time, like, even though they were important to me, like, we weren't living together, we weren't, you know what I mean? So, like, I felt like there were things I couldn't take too much to heart. But it was like, when I look back on it, like, it was so confusing because he would come to some things, but wouldn't come to others. He would meet up with me and my family. Like I said, he came trick-or-treating with us. He stopped by for Thanksgiving. My cousins, a couple of my cousins and I had, like, a sugar cookie decorating night for Christmas cookies. And he came and he was helping my son decorate cookies for Christmas. And then Christmas actually rolls around and he doesn't show up to my family's. Like, it's just all this stuff, you know? And then he had a work Christmas party that he didn't invite me to. And, you know, I chalked it up, well, I believe he told me only employees were going, if I remember right. But either way, maybe he didn't say that. He didn't invite me is the point. So, I let it go. January rolls around. And at this point, move-in talk got discussed, and he moved in. It was January, February when he moved in. There was a night, he had been really, really sick. He always got sick for a couple weeks every year, a couple weeks out of the year. It was crazy, ridiculous, and honestly, I kind of felt bad for him. A lot of throwing up, a lot of just couldn't keep anything down. Don't know what it was, but it was literally every single year this would happen for a couple weeks on end. But he eventually went to the hospital one night, and my little cousin was over at the house, and I asked, you know, sorry. I got teared up and now my nose won't stop. And then I also have allergies, so that doesn't help, guys. Anyway, so he went to the hospital, and I was like, okay, well, do you want me to come there? Like, I had been out and about with my family previously during the day when he went to the hospital, and then when I got home, I was like, okay, do you want me to come there? Like, I was going to drop the kids off. Well, my son and my little cousin. And she could watch him. And then he stopped answering his phone. So I was like, okay, maybe he got released already, because I knew it was kind of like last time we had talked, it was like they were going to release him, but we didn't know like when. It was because they didn't know what was going on with him either. It was a whole thing. And I called the hospital and I asked if he had gotten released, and they told me yes. But then like 30 minutes later, I finally hear from him, and he was still at the hospital. And I was like, well, do you want me to come there? Like, do you want me to come there? And he pretty much told me no, pushed me off, had an attitude. Like, I guess he thought I was supposed to be at the hospital with him the whole time he was there, even though I wasn't home when he left. Yeah. So it made me feel bad and guilty for it. Then he finally got released from the hospital and doesn't come home. At this point, we're living together. So not coming home bothers me. He claims he went to a friend's house just because it was closer to the hospital, and he was just so dang sick, which, I mean, he was, but at his friend's house, he answered once or twice when I called him, but, like, I kept calling him back to back to back. I'm like, I will come get you. You don't need to drive. Like, I will come get you. We can get your car later. You know, he's not answering at this point once he gets to his friend's house. Red flags. He's not answering. I call back to back to back to back to back. No answer. I let it go. I was pissed off, obviously, but I let it go for the night. He finally gets back. I get the excuses again. Go figure. And again, I let it go, guys. I let it go. I have this thing that I always want to see the good in people, and that's why narcissists, they pick out and detect those kind of people. And they pick out and detect people that are typically strong and stand on their own and independent, because they need that to feed off of. So seeing me as a single mother, living on her own, doing well for herself, you know what I'm saying? Like, big heart, like, cares for people. Oh my gosh, like, would do anything for the people I love. He sought that out intentionally. And yeah. Sorry. I get stuck sometimes when I start thinking about, like, all these things. I just let go and let go and let go. Like I said in the beginning, and I'm like, oh gosh, Brittany, get it together, girl. But yeah, so that's how that started. I'm going to take you up till when we got engaged. So it's going to be a little longer than last video. But I just kind of want to get this gist out of it. Because after the engagement is when things really started to, if you know what I'm saying. So Valentine's Day comes around, my birthday comes around, everything goes good. Can't really have any complaints at all. And then I finally meet his daughter. Amazing little girl, if I do say so myself. She's so sweet. But I finally got to meet her. My son and her, oh my gosh, to this day they love each other to death and still call each other brother and sister, even though we're not together anymore. They are only 2 months apart in age, so everybody thought they were twins. And she was a little bit of a, she's a girly girl, but she could also be a tomboy, so, like, it kind of worked out well for me having a boy and her being a girl, because, like, she would wrestle and fight with him, but then, you know, she'd have her times and she'd be like, no, I want to, you know, play princess or do this or do that. But she came into the picture, and her and I got along really well. I love kids. So her and I clicked. Her and my son clicked. Everything just was clicking. And it came to the point we were living in a 2-bedroom apartment, and I wanted his daughter to have her own space, and he wanted his daughter to have her own space. And I had been kind of looking at the housing market, because my son was coming up on going into kindergarten that following year, and I just didn't want him in the school district that I was living in at the time. I wanted him in a better school district that just had better funding, better academics, better everything. So I started looking for houses in another district, in another city. Not far away at all by any means, but was looking. And he encouraged me, and I really appreciated it. Like, it was, babe, you can do this. Like, I got you. I'll help, with the money, like, to get the house and stuff like that. Which he did give me a few $1,000s to help with the down payment and everything. And I looked at a couple houses. Didn't really care for them. And then finally found this one house. It was a little higher than we wanted to go for, but it was literally perfect. Literally perfect. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. It was great. At this point, we were also talking about getting some dogs. So like we were just, our future, everything we had talked about was just coming together. Like everything was seemingly perfect other than, those small little red flags that happened months previous. Like everything was just kind of clicking and coming together. So Mother's Day weekend, that Friday, we went and looked at the house. Turns out the guy who was selling the house, I worked with his wife. So it made it kind of a funny situation. Anyway, we left from looking at the house on that Friday night, and I'm sitting in the car, and I'm like, should I put an offer? Should we put an offer? What should we do? And he said, go for it. So I said, you know what? I'm going for it. Put in the offer, and the next day, Saturday morning, they accepted the offer on the house. We were so excited. So excited. And then that following Sunday was Mother's Day. And we had his daughter and her brother, which was from her mom's past relationship, staying at our house that weekend. Tried to include all the kids, don't want to separate siblings, and then obviously my son was there. And we took his daughter and her brother home Sunday afternoonish. And he had asked me, hey, do you think your mom would mind watching Trey for a little bit tonight so you and I can maybe go out to dinner just to celebrate Mother's Day, just you and I kind of have some adult time? And since, we had kids all weekend, and I was like, yeah, I'll ask her. And of course, my mom said that was fine. She loves her grandkid, so of course. So we went out to dinner, and he always got me jewelry for holidays, birthdays, all that stuff. And he kept constantly telling me, like, I'm not going to get you any more jewelry till it's a ring. Because I already got necklaces, bracelets, like, that was his thing. I think that's kind of a typical man thing, honestly, on holidays. My stepdad does the same thing. Well, now he kind of does purses, but not to get off topic. Sorry, guys. It's how my brain works. Roll with it. Roll with me. It's okay. So anyway, he kept telling me he wasn't going to be any more jewelry till it was a ring. And we ate dinner. It was nice. He's like, are you getting dessert? And I was like, oh, I don't think so. He's like, no, pick out dessert. And I'm like, okay. So, like, I did. And, well, a box was on my dessert. And I looked at him and I was like, you said I wasn't getting more jewelry till a ring. What is this? And he was like, open it. And I was like, okay. And I opened it, and sure enough, it was a ring, and he proposed. Of course, I said yes at that time. And it was amazing. The whole restaurant clapped. It was, yeah. And that whole weekend just seemed to be great. Got the house, got engaged. It seemed like everything was coming together. And it was, for the time being, till we moved into the house. So, that will be next. Sorry I made this a little long. I also talk fairly quickly, So, could be a lot longer if I didn't talk quick. And I'm talking too fast for everybody. Let me know. I can slow it down. There's just a lot, and I'm trying to get through it for you guys. But those are some of the red flags. Those are things to look out for if you are in a relationship, going through a relationship. And I'm not saying everybody is the same way. I'm not saying people can't have certain characteristics and them not turn out to be abusers. Like, I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying, like, in my situation, it seemed to be like it was small things, but it was one thing after another that was small. And it would be a couple months or a month in between. So by the time the next small thing happened, it didn't seem like such a big deal. You know what I mean? Because it wasn't like day after day after day or like week after week after week. It was like a month here, a few months later, something else here. It was spread out to where you would hit a little low, little bump, but then they would bring their level back up to here of like, I love you, and, you know, start showering you with all this love and affection and, you know, encouragement and everything before another little bump. You know what I'm saying? So just keep an eye out for those kinds of things. I'm going to get in more depth. This is just kind of like the beginning things that once I made it through and out of the relationship and looking back on things, I'm like, oh, red flag, what the heck was I thinking? You know, so like I just want people to know like things to look for, and just keep an eye on if you're going through a situation or if you're just having that gut feeling. And here's one thing I'm going to tell you: trust your gut. Trust your gut, especially, I don't want to say just females, but like they always say it's a woman's intuition. I'm not saying men don't have it too, but it's a woman's intuition. And I just want to say, trust yourself. If you have a feeling that you're like, about, explore it. Overthink it. Because that overthinking is probably right. Because I will say, one of the biggest things after leaving the relationship for me, I know a lot of women or people, I don't want to say women, sorry, like to blame themselves and have that why me aspect and blame themselves of, it's hard to explain, but I will say I've never blamed myself for what I went through, and I've never had that why me aspect. I haven't truly. The biggest thing for me, and the only thing that sticks out in my mind that I've even talked to my therapist about, was I was more upset with myself that I didn't trust myself, that I stopped listening to myself, that I stopped trusting my gut, that I stopped that because of all this other stuff going on, you know. So like that was my biggest hiccup or hang up after everything was said and done, is like I was mad at myself for not trusting myself. Like I knew better, but I didn't listen to myself. I didn't trust myself. And I wish I would have. So what I want to get at is just this whole like little beginning part of what I went through. Obviously a lot more to come. But just this beginning part of what I went through, and what the one thing I want anybody watching to take away from this who may be going through this or, you know, is questioning things, trust yourself. Trust that gut. If something doesn't seem right or feel right, it's probably not right. So just trust yourself, okay? Like, that's what I want you guys to do right now, is just that gut instinct, that overthink. I always just thought I overthought everything. No, I mean, I do overthink. But no, just trust yourself, guys, okay? And next week, we'll get into after the engagement and into moving into our house and the flags that came around then, and more of the downhill slide, uphill slides, the roller coaster that I was on. All right. Love y'all.